Okay, picking up where we left off on page 599, and I'm talking about my tales of woe about who is responsible for doing the data conversion, who is responsible for doing the fixes to the data that did not convert. And if you're not prepared for that jolt, you're probably in for a world of hurt. Okay, so part of construction is to convert the data over. Obviously, during construction, you're probably going to have to do this in phases. You'll convert over the data so you can play with it. And then when it comes time to doing the cutoff, which is several phases away, we'll probably have to go back and get the data a second time because you want the most current data, obviously, not data from a month ago. Okay, the next thing is called unit testing. And programmers typically do unit testing. What happens is I develop a little module over here that does one thing, that does reports, for example. And this one over here does, some sort of calculations. So I test each individual piece. I'll say, well, okay, does this do everything it's supposed to do? Yes. Does this do everything it's supposed to do? Yes. And so unit testing is taking each individual piece independently and testing to make sure that it performs the way it's supposed to perform. That's unit testing. In the next phase, which I guess we'll just transition directly into, this is the integration and testing phase. So this would be phase 5. So the first thing you do in integration and testing is, now that I've done the unit testing in that other phase, now I want to put them all together and see if they work together, because I've developed this one to do the calculations for the report, and I've done this one that actually produces the report. Wouldn't it be kind of cool if you put them together and see if you actually got good data in your report? So that's what integration testing is all about. So I take individual pieces that have already been washed through the unit testing and I bolt them together. So that's one thing. Now, you might think, well, that's great. I've got several parts together, but isn't there more? Why, yes, there is. And that's system testing. So system testing is, I've done all the unit testing, I've done all the integration testing, and now I need to test the whole system to make sure everything works. Okay. They call this black box testing. I like that, because this is just making sure, in other words, I don't have to know how the individual things work behind the scenes. I want to know, does it work? Does it work the way it's supposed to? At this point, I don't really care how it does it. I just want to make sure when I push this button, it actually does what it's supposed to do. So that is the system testing. Now, this would be a good point. Remember I talked about the embellishing remarks, talking about phase 2. I made a list of functional requirements in phase 2. And I probably have some sort of a tracking system for requirements. Yeah. Well, this would be a good time to go through that one more time and say, wait a minute now, we've done the system testing, so let's go back through the list of requirements. Let's see, does it do this? Yes. Does it do this? Yes. And go through and check off from the requirements. Okay, cool. The next type of testing they talk about is called volume testing. So this is basically, can I break it? In other words, I want to make sure that my system is robust enough, so I only have 10 data entry people today, but let's just pretend like we have 100. And we're going to have 100 people doing data entry to it nonstop for an hour on end. Is it still going to work? So you actually pick something that's well beyond your current capability to determine if this thing can scale properly. This is more like the kind of testing you would do like on the Affordable Care Act website. Before Obamacare came out, if they had done some really good volume testing on this, they could have told immediately that there was no way that it could handle the load that it did. So this is what volume testing is all about. The next one is kind of an important one. It's called user acceptance testing. So I've proven that the system works, but I'm the vendor, right? I'm the guy you hired to put this thing together. And so I say, yep, it works. And you're going to just say, well, hey, the vendor says it works. I guess that's good enough to me. Is that how that works? No. Don't you think maybe the user, the customer, should go through and do some testing? Because they're not going to take my word for it. Yeah, everything's fine. Well, this is all about getting the customer, the user, to go through and sign off that says, yes, I have met all the requirements. Okay, so phase 3 gave me a list of requirements I'm supposed to do. And so user acceptance testing is basically proving to the customer that I have done everything that I was contracted to do. So user assistance testing is very important. One of the things is, this basically is like almost the end of my contract. When we do user acceptance testing, I get paid. Okay, now do you understand why user acceptance testing is important? Because if I don't do this, or if I fail at this, I don't get paid. Okay, so maybe this is kind of important, huh? So, there are some problems with user acceptance testing. It's not as perfect as you might think. One is, in order for me to do this, I have to have some users, okay? And I have, if the users aren't trained on the system, then they're not really going to be able to do it to find out whether or not things work. But on the other hand, how can I train them on a system that's not even complete yet? So you have to pick some users. Actually, what I would do, if I was the vendor doing this, I would go to the customer and say, Mr. Customer, could you recommend some names for me? Okay, then I would spend a few minutes training them to show them how it works, and then have them go through. So I have a team that's trained. I have some sort of a schedule. Everybody meet next Friday, that kind of stuff. We have a design some test cases. Okay, everyone, let's pretend like this is an order from Mr. Jones. And so up on the screen is Mr. Jones's information. Everyone enters an order from Mr. Jones. So you have to have some fake scenarios already built. So the test cases are documented step by step. The team makes sure everything works. And anyway, the bottom line is there's an awful lot. You want the test to be as real world as possible. However, while you're doing this testing, you don't want, let's say that your system, like a shopping cart for a website, you don't want to actually go and send the data to the credit card company and, get sent to shipping, right? It's test data, right? So you have to have some way of either having a test database that's completely separate from production, or using some specially coded names or invoice numbers or credit card numbers that are specially coded that the system knows, wait a minute, this is just a test case. We're not actually billing this guy. Okay. So yes, there's an awful lot of prep in doing this. And depending on how complex your system is, this user acceptance testing could be pretty rough. You might have to do a hell of a lot of work. You may have to stand up an entire fake database just to be able to pull this off. Okay. So having fake data is kind of sort of important. At the end, you're going to end up with a document, some sort of a user acceptance document. Now, a lot of people, since you don't want to burden the customer for producing this, they actually hire like a third party. So you have the customer, you, the vendor who's putting the thing together, and you actually hire another person to put together this last document. The document says, I was present during all the testing, and it did this, sign here. So this is that formal agreement that everyone signs, the user signs, that basically releases your liability. At this point, it says, I have completed all the tasks that I've been assigned, and I want to get paid. So this is the document where you hold out your hand and say, please pay me. Okay. So here's an example of the three types of, four, because we go back to the previous one. So let's just go through them. This is a review of all the testing types we just talked about. So unit testing. Okay, so unit testing was in what phase? It ain't the phase we're in now. Okay, unit testing is each individual piece is tested on its own, and that test is being performed by the person or the team, the development team, who's actually writing the code. Okay. Integration testing is, once again, it's taking the individual pieces and see if the jigsaw puzzles fit. That's it. I've tested this jigsaw puzzle, and I've tested this jigsaw puzzle. Do they fit? And once again, it's being run by the developer team. Okay. There are some organizations that have testing as a separate function, separate people, but that rarely works. System testing is everything is put together, and now I want to make sure everything works. So this is like the final test before we ship kind of thing. And again, you could have an independent team that's separate from the development team do this, because these are the people who are only interested in requirements. They don't know or care how it does its tricks. It just wants to know, do you have this feature? Boom, boom, boom. So they're hunting for features. Volume testing. Can I break it? Can I come up with a particular load to there is load simulation software out there that you can just turn on, like for a database, and just beat the heck out of a database to see if it's going to hang on. And then user acceptance testing, and this is typically done by the user. And of course, that's the one that's most important, because that's the one you get paid. Okay. Alrighty. So we're actually ready for the next phase. The next phase is, okay, I've kind of built the thing, and I've kind of done the integration and testing piece, and now it's time to actually put it into use. Well, the first thing I got to do is I need to get my users ready. So let's talk about the user prep. So user prep is all about winning the hearts and minds of the user. This is an awful lot of psychological kind of a concept, and hardly anything to do with business and computers. This is getting the managers and decision makers, employees and system users, all these things to like and accept the new system. Now, I will tell you, this could be an impossible task. I've given you guys a scenario before. Let's say, for example, that your organization used Lotus Notes for doing your email and collaboration, and it worked fantastic for you. You're a small shop and you absolutely love it. And then you got bought out by a competitor, and they came in and says, no, we're using Microsoft Exchange and SharePoint, so you need to get rid of your Lotus Notes. Okay. These people are not going to be happy. They are not going to be happy, and you are not going to win the hearts and minds of these people, because they're happy with their existing system, and the new system you're giving them is slower and has less features and isn't quite as slick. And so they're going to see no benefit whatsoever, and you basically have to convince them, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to do this anyway. All right, so this is tough, let me tell you. So if you don't want the system, this is tough. So there's an awful talks about habits and creating a climate that's receptive to change. Again, this is more business and psychology than it is doing with anything else. So yes, user prep is tough. One of the things that they don't talk about in the book, which is pretty impressive, is it could be you may have to hire new people. For example, let's say you don't even have a server operations people in your organization at all, but you're now going to have a server. So you'd have to hire a brand new database administrator and server administrator that didn't exist before. So you need to kind of train those people up. So sometimes the user prep is hiring new employees and training them, in addition to your normal people where you're going to have to convince them that the new system is great. Okay, one of the other preps that you can do is you have to physically prep the site. Now this could be something as simple as clearing a spot in the server room, or it could be something as complex as building an entire new facility to handle the stuff. So the scale of this can be tremendous. Here are the things you kind of have to remember. I need lots of power. I need reliable power. So maybe I need to put like a backup generator in there and an uninterrupted power supply. I need air conditioning, reliable air conditioning. I don't want to have just one air conditioning. I probably want to have two independent ones. So if one of them failed, the system continues. I need to have good network connectivity. And again, I probably want to have multiple vendors bring lines in, so in case one gets cut, the other one continues. How about, does it fit through the door? That'd be good information. Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this thing up again in just a few.